They walked into the courtroom like they already owned the verdict. Rachel, the CEO, who thought he was untouchable, and Sienna, the mistress, who thought she had replaced the wife. They were laughing. They were holding hands. They looked at Catherine, the woman sitting alone at the plaintiff's table, and saw nothing but a defeated housewife. But they didn't know that Catherine hadn't just spent the last 6 months crying. She had been digging. And in a trial where everything seemed black and white, one question from the judge was about to turn their entire world into a nightmare. Watch closely, because the smile on the mistress's face is about to disappear forever. The heavy oak doors of the Manhattan Supreme Court. Civil term swung open with a theatrical groan admitting the man of the hour. Rachel Blackwood didn't just walk. He glided. At 45, he was the picture of American corporate vitality, tanned from weekends in the Hamptons, tailored in a bespoke navy suit that cost more than most people's cars, and wearing a smirk that suggested he knew the punchline to a joke everyone else was still trying to understand. Clinging to his arm was Sienna Rain. She was 26, sharp-featured and undeniably stunning, with the kind of aggressive confidence that often masks deep insecurity. She wasn't just the mistress. She was the newly appointed vice president of communications at Blackwood Systems. She wore a cream-colored dress that was technically modest, but fit her so precisely it felt like a provocation. They looked less like defendants in a high-stakes divorce and asset division case, and more like a celebrity couple arriving at a gallery opening. On the other side of the aisle sat Catherine Blackwood. If Rachel was a lion, Catherine was a statue. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded over a simple leather folio. She wore a charcoal grey suit that was elegant, but dated perhaps 3 seasons old. She wore no jewelry other than a small silver watch. Her face was unreadable. She didn't look up when Rachel and Sienna entered. She didn't flinch when Sienna let out a high, tinkling laugh that echoed off the high ceilings, a sound clearly intended to reach Catherine's ears. "Relax, Rachel," Sienna whispered loud enough for the front row to hear. "It's just a formality. Arthur said the pre-enup is ironclad." Arthur Penhaligon, Rachel's lawyer, was already arranging his papers. He was a man known in New York legal circles as the Butcher of Broadway. He was expensive, nasty, and effective. He shot a glance at Sienna that said, "Shut up," but he didn't verbally reprimand her. He was too busy staring down the opposition. Catherine's lawyer was a stark contrast. Samuel Green was an older man, heavily set with spectacles that constantly slid down his nose. He looked like a grandfather who did tax returns for his neighbors in Queens. He was shuffling papers nervously. "All rise," the bailiff boomed. The Honorable Judge Beatrice Halloway swept onto the bench. Halloway was a legend in the family court circuit. She was known for 2 things: a zero-tolerance policy for courtroom theatrics, and a mind that worked like a forensic calculator. She didn't look at the lawyers. She looked at the files. Case number 4492B. Judge Halloway intoned her voice dry as parchment. "Blackwood versus Blackwood. We are here to finalize the division of assets, specifically the contested ownership and valuation of the marital estate's primary asset, the technology firm Blackwood Systems." Rachel leaned back in his chair, stretching his legs. He winked at Sienna. "Mr. Penhaligon," the judge said without looking up. "You may begin." "Thank you, Your Honor." Arthur Penhaligon stood up, buttoning his jacket. "The facts are simple. My client, Rachel Blackwood, built Blackwood Systems from the ground up. Mrs. Catherine Blackwood has not been involved in the company's operations for over 15 years. She has been a homemaker. While we appreciate her contributions to the household, the company is a separate entity. Furthermore, the defense will show that the company is currently operating at a significant deficit. There are no liquid assets to divide. In fact, Mr. Blackwood is currently in debt to keep the business afloat. It was the classic poor mouth strategy. Hide the money, plead poverty, and force a settlement for pennies on the dollar. Sienna smirked. She knew the truth. She knew about the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. She knew about the shell companies. She knew because she had helped Rachel set them up. Mr. Green, the judge turned to Catherine's lawyer. Samuel Green stood up slowly. He adjusted his glasses. Your Honor, we dispute the claim that the company is in debt. In fact, we believe the company has been re-engineered. Rachel let out a loud, scoffing laugh. Re-engineered. It's called a pivot, you old fool. Order. Judge Halloway snapped her eyes, locking on to Rachel. Mr. Blackwood, one more outburst, and I will hold you in contempt. This is a courtroom, not a boardroom. Rachel raised his hands in mock surrender, but the smile remained. He leaned over to Sienna. Watch this. They have nothing. Sienna squeezed his hand. I know, baby. We've won. She looked over at Catherine. For the first time, Catherine turned her head. Their eyes met. Sienna smiled a cruel, victorious curving of red lips. Catherine didn't smile back. She just blinked once, slowly. It was the blink of a predator deciding which artery to sever. To understand the carnage that was about to unfold in courtroom 4B, you have to understand who Catherine Blackwood really was. 15 years ago, Catherine wasn't a homemaker. She was Catherine Hale, a dual degree holder in computer science and forensic accounting from MIT. When she met Rachel, he was a charismatic salesman with a half-baked idea for logistics software and a mountain of student debt. It was Catherine who wrote the original code for the Blackwood algorithm. It was Catherine who structured the initial LLC to minimize tax liability. It was Catherine who stayed up for 3 nights straight to patch the server before their first big demo with FedEx. But Rachel was the face. He was the one who looked good in a suit. He was the one who could charm investors. And Catherine, who preferred the quiet logic of numbers to the noise of people, was happy to step back. You run the stage, Jules, she had told him on their wedding night. I'll run the lights. For a decade it worked. The company soared. They moved from a cramped apartment in Brooklyn to a penthouse on Park Avenue. Catherine stepped down from her official role as CTO to raise their son Leo. She trusted Rachel. She trusted him with the business, with their finances, with their life. Then came the drift. It started slowly: late nights, missed dinners, a password change on his phone. Catherine wasn't suspicious initially. She was worried. She thought he was stressed. Then came Sienna. Sienna Rain had started as an intern. She was hungry, willing to do anything to climb, and she realized quickly that the fastest way to the top wasn't hard work. It was the CEO. When Catherine found out, it wasn't through a text message or a lipstick stain. It was the numbers. 6 months before the trial, Catherine had been looking at the family trust statements to prepare for Leo's tuition. She noticed a discrepancy, a recurring withdrawal of $12,500 listed as consulting fees paid to a company called Viridian Creative. Catherine didn't scream. She didn't throw a vase. She went to her home office, unlocked her secure server, the one she hadn't used in years, and ran a background trace on Viridian Creative. The registered agent was a P.O. box in Delaware, but the metadata on the website domain registration pointed to a personal email, sienna.r.blackwoodsystems.com. Catherine sat in the dark of her office for 3 hours. The grief hit her like a physical blow, a crushing weight in her chest. She cried silently, tears soaking the collar of her sweater. She mourned her marriage. She mourned the trust she had given away so freely. But by 4 a.m., the tears stopped. The cold, hard logic that had made her a brilliant coder flickered back to life. She began to dig deeper. She accessed the company's back end. Rachel had changed the admin passwords, of course, but he had forgotten that Catherine had built the system. She had a backdoor key, a root access code she had embedded in the kernel 15 years ago, just in case they ever got locked out. She logged in. What she found was worse than infidelity. It was systematic theft. Rachel wasn't just sleeping with Sienna. He was dismantling the marital assets. He was funneling millions of dollars of intellectual property and revenue into a complex web of shell companies, all designed to look like operating losses. He was preparing to divorce Catherine and leave her with nothing but a hollow shell, while he and Sienna walked away with the empire Catherine had built. He was going to leave her penniless. Catherine printed the documents. She saved the logs. Then she wiped her digital footprints. The next morning she made Rachel pancakes. She kissed him on the cheek before he left for work. "Have a good day, darling," she said. "I will," he replied, checking his reflection in the hallway mirror. "Big meetings today." "I bet," she whispered as the door clicked shut. That afternoon, she didn't call a divorce lawyer. Not yet. She called Samuel Green, an old friend of her father's, a man who understood that the law wasn't about shouting. It was about paperwork. And she called a private investigator named Tobias Reed to verify the physical movements of the money. For 6 months, Catherine played the role of the oblivious wife. She let Rachel feel smart. She let Sienna feel superior. She watched them construct their trap brick by brick. She waited. Back in the courtroom, the air conditioning was humming, but Rachel was starting to sweat. Just a little. Arthur Penhaligon was wrapping up his opening statement. "In conclusion, Your Honor, Blackwood Systems is a failing entity. The valuation presented by the plaintiff, $50 million, is a fantasy. The company has liabilities exceeding its assets. Mr. Blackwood is willing to offer Mrs. Blackwood the family home in Scarsdale and a lump sum of $200,000. We believe this is more than generous, given the state of the business." Judge Halloway looked over her glasses. $200,000 for a company that was featured in Forbes last year. "Projections, Your Honor," Arthur said smoothly. "The tech market is volatile. Blackwood Systems has suffered from bad investments." "Very well," the judge said. "Mr. Green, call your first witness." Samuel Green stood up. "We call Mr. Rachel Blackwood to the stand." Rachel adjusted his tie and walked to the witness box. He swore to tell the truth with the easy confidence of a sociopath. Green approached the stand holding a single piece of paper. "Mr. Blackwood," Green began, his voice wheezy, "you state that Blackwood Systems is in debt. Can you explain the relationship between Blackwood Systems and a company called Obsidian Holdings, LLC? Rachel didn't flinch. He had rehearsed this. Obsidian Holdings is a third-party vendor. We use them for cloud storage and server maintenance. We owe them significant back pay. "I see," Green said. "And who owns Obsidian Holdings?" "I believe it is a consortium of international investors based in Zurich." Rachel lied. "So you have no financial interest in Obsidian Holdings? None whatsoever." Sienna, sitting in the gallery, suppressed a smile. "Good answer, Rachel. Obsidian Holdings was the key. They had moved the core software patents, the crown jewels of the company, to Obsidian 3 months ago. On paper, Blackwood Systems was now just an empty office paying rent to Obsidian for the right to use the software. Blackwood was worthless. Obsidian was the gold mine. And Obsidian's ownership was hidden behind 3 layers of anonymous trusts. And Green continued shuffling to another paper. What about Project 24? Rachel paused. Project 24 was the internal code name for the acquisition of a new AI algorithm. That was a failed R&D initiative. We scrapped it. Scrapped it. Green looked confused. That's odd. Because according to this bank statement from the Cayman National Bank, Project 24 received a wire transfer of $4 million from Blackwood Systems accounts on January the 14th. Arthur Penhaligon shot up. Objection. Your Honor, where did counsel get these documents? These are private banking records. These were obtained through discovery from the undeniable digital trail your client left on the shared family server, Green said calmly. Mrs. Blackwood had access to the cloud backups. The judge banged her gavel. Overruled. Answer the question, Mr. Blackwood. Rachel cleared his throat. It was a liquidation fee to close down the project. $4 million to close a project? Green asked. Or was it a transfer of capital to an entity controlled by... Green paused and turned to look directly at Sienna. Ms. Sienna Rain. Sienna froze. The smile wavered. Rachel laughed nervously. That's absurd. Ms. Rain is an employee. She doesn't own shell companies. Mr. Green, the judge interrupted, get to the point. The point, Your Honor. Green said, his voice suddenly losing its wheezy quality and becoming sharp as a razor, is that Mr. Blackwood has engaged in a classic fraud on the court. He has moved the company's assets into Obsidian Holdings, claiming it is a third-party vendor. But we are prepared to show who the true signatory of Obsidian Holdings is. Rachel gripped the railing of the witness box. He looked at Arthur. Arthur looked worried. Rachel felt a bead of sweat roll down his back. They can't know. The signatory was a blind trust. The beneficiary was listed as the J.B. Revocable Trust. Green turned to the gallery. We have subpoenaed the incorporation documents from the registered agent in Nevis. It took some doing, but international treaties are helpful things. Green handed a thick binder to the judge and another to Arthur Penhaligon. If you turn to page 14, Green said, you will see the beneficial owner of Obsidian Holdings. The courtroom went silent. The only sound was the rustling of paper. Judge Halloway read the page. Her eyebrows shot up. She looked at Rachel. Then she looked at Sienna. Mr. Blackwood, the judge said, her voice dangerously quiet. According to this, the sole owner of Obsidian Holdings, the company that now holds all of Blackwood Systems' patents and cash reserves, is not a Swiss consortium. Rachel's heart hammered. Did I put it in Sienna's name? He had discussed it. It was a fail-safe. If the courts came for him, Sienna would hold it. She was loyal. She was in love with him. Who is it? Rachel asked, his voice cracking. The owner is listed as Miss Sienna Rain, the judge said. Rachel exhaled. A wave of relief washed over him. It's okay. It was part of the plan. He could trust Sienna. If Sienna owned it, Catherine couldn't touch it. It was third-party property now. Rachel looked at Sienna. Sienna was beaming. She sat up straighter. She owned it. It was in her name. She was rich. Even if Rachel lost everything here, she had the assets. Sienna smiled at the judge. "That's correct, Your Honor," she said from the gallery, ignoring Arthur's frantic hand signals to stay quiet. "I own Obsidian Holdings. I bought the assets from Blackwood Systems fair and square." "You bought them?" the judge asked. "Yes," Sienna said, confident. "So they are my property, not marital property." Rachel smirked at Catherine. Checkmate. The courtroom was silent. Catherine Blackwood finally moved. She slowly unclasped her hands and leaned over to whisper something to Samuel Green. Green nodded. He turned back to the judge. "So," Green said, addressing the room, "we have established that Ms. Rain owns Obsidian Holdings, and Obsidian Holdings owns the software, the patents, and the cash." "Yes," Sienna said, almost laughing. "And," Green continued, "Miss Rain, did you sign the purchase agreement? Did you sign the documents accepting the transfer of these assets?" "I did," Sienna said. "I signed everything." "Excellent," Green said. He picked up a new document, a single red-bordered sheet of paper. "Your Honor," Green said, "I would like to submit into evidence Plaintiff's Exhibit G." He handed the paper to the bailiff. "What is this?" Arthur Penhaligon snapped, snatching the copy. He read it. His face went pale. He dropped the paper on the table and looked at Rachel with a look of absolute horror. "You idiot," he whispered. "What?" Rachel asked. "What is it?" "This," Green announced, "is the non-compete and intellectual property assignment agreement that Ms. Sienna Rain signed 4 years ago when she joined Blackwood Systems as an intern." Sienna's smile faltered. "So everyone signs that?" "Yes," Green said. "But Mrs. Blackwood, who wrote the company contracts, added a very specific clause to the Employee Handbook, Section 8, Paragraph 4. Green began to read aloud. "Any and all intellectual property business ventures or corporate entities created, acquired, or managed by any employee of Blackwood Systems, if related to the company's core business, shall be considered work for hire and immediately become the sole property of Blackwood Systems, unless explicitly released in writing by the board of directors." Green looked up. The silence in the room was deafening. "Ms. Rain was an employee of Blackwood Systems when she acquired Obsidian Holdings," Green said. "She did not get board approval. Therefore, under the contract she signed, Obsidian Holdings does not belong to her." Rachel's eyes widened. "Then, who owns it?" Green pointed to the plaintiff's table. "Since Obsidian is now considered an internal asset of Blackwood Systems, and since we are here to divide the marital estate, Obsidian Holdings is effectively owned by the primary shareholder." Green paused for effect. "And as of this morning, Mrs. Catherine Blackwood exercised her stock options." Options. Rachel Blackwood forgot she retained from the founding of the company, giving her 51% controlling interest in Blackwood Systems. Sienna's smile was gone. Her mouth hung open. "So," Green finished, "Ms. Rain, you don't own the company. You just successfully laundered all of Rachel's hidden cash back into a company that Catherine now controls." Rachel stood up, his face purple. That's impossible." "Sit down," Judge Halloway barked. Catherine Blackwood stood up. For the first time, she spoke. Her voice was calm, clear, and terrifyingly steady. "It's not impossible, Rachel," she said. "It's basic math. You always forgot to check the variables." The silence in courtroom 4B was not peaceful. It was heavy like the air before a tornado touches down. Arthur Penhaligon, a man who charged $1,200 an hour to frighten people, looked as though he had just swallowed a shard of glass. He was staring at the document in his hands, the non-compete and intellectual property assignment agreement Sienna Rain had signed 4 years ago. It was standard boilerplate text for interns. Every tech company in Silicon Valley and New York used it. It was designed to prevent low-level coders from stealing code and starting rival apps. It was never intended to swallow a multi-million-dollar shell company whole. "Your Honor," Arthur stammered, his composure fracturing. This is a misapplication of contract law. Ms. Rain was acting as a private investor, not an employee, when she acquired Obsidian Holdings. The work-for-hire doctrine cannot possibly apply to an external asset acquisition." Judge Holloway adjusted her glasses. She looked like a woman who was enjoying her job for the first time in years. "Mr. Penhaligon," she said, her voice crisp. "The contract states, and I quote, 'any business venture created, acquired, or managed by an employee.' Ms. Rain is currently the Vice President of Communications for Blackwood Systems. Is that correct?" "Yes, but..." "And she is currently on the payroll." "Yes, but..." "And did she acquire Obsidian Holdings during her tenure of employment?" Arthur shut his mouth. He looked at Sienna. Sienna looked at Rachel. Rachel looked like he wanted to murder both of them. "Yes, Your Honor," Arthur whispered. "Then the text is clear," the judge ruled. "Obsidian Holdings is by contract an asset of Blackwood Systems, and since we have established that Mrs. Catherine Blackwood holds the controlling interest in Blackwood Systems due to her exercised options..." The judge turned to Catherine. "Mrs. Blackwood, it appears you have reacquired your husband's hidden assets without spending a dime." Rachel slammed his hand on the table. "This is a setup. She trapped us. Mr. Blackwood." The bailiff took a step forward, hand resting on his belt. Rachel stood up, his face a mask of panicked rage. He pointed a shaking finger at Catherine. You knew Sienna signed that you let me transfer the patents to Obsidian because you knew you could just recall them." Catherine didn't flinch. She looked at him with a gaze that was almost pitying. "I didn't let you do anything, Rachel," she said softly. "You chose to hide money. You chose to defraud the court. And you chose a mistress who didn't read her employment contract. Don't blame me for your incompetence." "I want a recess," Arthur shouted. "We need a recess to confer with my client." "Granted," Judge Holloway said, banging the gavel. 30 minutes. But let me be clear, if any assets move from Obsidian Holdings in the next 30 minutes, I will have everyone at the defense table arrested for grand larceny." "Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," Arthur hissed. Chatong. The hallway outside the courtroom was a study in contrasts. On one side, Samuel Green was calmly buying a bottle of water from a vending machine. On the other, near the elevators, the defense team was imploding. "You idiot!" Rachel hissed, grabbing Sienna's arm hard enough to leave a mark. "How could you be so stupid? You signed a standard intern agreement. You didn't think to tell me..." Sienna pulled her arm away, her eyes flashing. "Don't touch me. You're the genius businessman. You're the one who said, 'Put it in your name, Sienna. It's safer.' You didn't check my contract either." "Rachel, I pay Arthur to check contracts." Rachel spun on his lawyer. "Fix this, Arthur, or I will sue you for malpractice so fast your head will spin." Arthur Penhaligon wiped sweat from his forehead with a silk handkerchief. "Rachel, shut up. Listen to me. We are in very deep water. The judge hates you. The law is technically on their side. If Catherine controls Blackwood, and Blackwood owns Obsidian, she controls the money. All of it. So uncontrol it," Rachel snapped. "Fire Sienna if she's not an employee. The clause doesn't apply. It applies retroactively to the date of acquisition." Arthur groaned. "We can't just fire her now and undo the past. The asset has already been captured. Sienna looked between the two men. The realization was dawning on her. The glamour, the power couple narrative, it was dissolving. She wasn't a partner anymore. She was the mistake. "What happens to me?" Sienna asked, her voice small. Rachel looked at her with cold, dead eyes. "I don't care what happens to you. You just cost me $50 million. At that moment, the door to the women's restroom opened, and Catherine stepped out. She stopped when she saw them. The hallway went quiet. Rachel straightened his jacket, trying to regain some shred of dignity. "Catherine," he said, his voice dropping to a low growl, "you think this is clever? You think you've won? I'll burn the company down before I let you run it. I'll liquidate everything. I'll leave you with ashes." Catherine walked over to them. She stood in front of Sienna, ignoring Rachel completely. "Sienna," Catherine said gently. Sienna looked at her defensive but terrified. "What?" "I know Rachel told you that I was cold," Catherine said. "I know he told you I didn't understand him. I know he told you that you were the only one who really got his vision." Sienna didn't answer. "He told me the same thing about his college girlfriend when we met," Catherine said. "And he told his college girlfriend the same thing about the girl before her." Catherine finally looked at Rachel. "You won't burn the company down, Rachel," she said, "because you don't have the matches anymore. I locked you out of the server 10 minutes ago." She checked her watch. "Oh, and Rachel, since I now hold the controlling vote on the board, you're fired." The recess ended, but the fight was effectively over. The rest of the afternoon was a procedural massacre. Judge Halloway, armed with the new facts, didn't just divide the assets. She surgically removed Rachel from his own life. Because of the fraud on the court, the attempt to hide assets in Obsidian Holdings, the judge invoked a harsh penalty. She awarded Catherine 100% of the marital home, 100% of the legitimate retirement accounts, and confirmed her 51% control of Blackwood Systems, and by extension, Obsidian. Rachel was left with his personal car, a leased Porsche, his wardrobe, and the debt he had accrued trying to set up the shell companies. But the real drama happened 3 days later. The setting was the Blackwood Systems headquarters in Tribeca. It was a glass-walled fortress of modernism, a place designed to intimidate. Rachel loved this building. He had designed the lobby himself. He swiped his keycard at the turnstile. Access denied. He swiped it again. A red light blinked mockingly. "Sir." Rachel turned. A security guard, a man Rachel had walked past every day for 5 years without ever learning his name, was standing there. "There's a glitch," Rachel snapped. "Open the gate." "I can't do that, Mr. Blackwood," the guard said, looking uncomfortable but firm. "I've been given orders. You're not permitted in the building." "I am the CEO," Rachel shouted. The morning rush of employees paused. People were watching. Some were recording on their phones. "Not anymore, sir." The elevator doors pinged open. Catherine walked out. She looked different. The dated grey suit from court was gone. She was wearing a tailored black blazer, sharp heels, and her hair was pulled back in a severe, commanding bun. She looked like the CEO she had been 15 years ago, before she stepped into the shadows. Flanking her were 2 men. One was Samuel Green. The other was a man Rachel recognized with a jolt of fear, Agent Miller, from the Forensic Accounting Division of the IRS. Rachel's stomach dropped. "Catherine," Rachel said, his voice wavering. "What is this? This is the transition," Catherine said coolly. "Please give your badge and company phone to the guard." "You can't do this," Rachel hissed, stepping closer. "I built this. You're nothing without me. You're just a coder. You don't know how to lead. I built the product, Rachel, Catherine said. You just sold it. And frankly, your sales technique has become fraudulent. She gestured to the man beside her. Mr. Miller has some questions for you regarding the tax filings for Obsidian Holdings. It seems that while you were hiding money from me, you also forgot to declare it to the government. Rachel went pale. The divorce court was civil. The IRS was criminal. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about prison. Catherine, please, Rachel whispered, the fight suddenly draining out of him. Don't do this. We can talk. For Leo's sake. Catherine's eyes hardened. Don't you dare say his name. You were planning to leave his mother destitute. You were planning to take his college fund to finance your life with Sienna. You lost the right to use Leo as a shield the moment you opened that bank account in the Caymans. She turned to the guard. Escort Mr. Blackwood off the premises. If he returns, call the police. As Rachel was led away, protesting weakly, Catherine didn't watch him go. She turned her attention to the corner of the lobby where Sienna Rain was standing. Sienna was holding a cardboard box. She had been cleaned out of her office 10 minutes prior. She looked small, frightened, and young. The arrogance of the courtroom was gone. Catherine walked over to her. Sienna flinched. I didn't know about the taxes, she stammered. I just signed what he gave me. I know, Catherine said. Are you going to sue me? Sienna asked, tears welling up. I don't have anything. He spent it all. Catherine looked at the younger woman. She saw the fear. She saw the stupidity. But she also saw the manipulation. Sienna was a predator, yes, but she was also prey. Rachel had used her as a human shield for his assets. I'm not going to sue you, Sienna, Catherine said. Sienna let out a sob of relief. Thank you. Oh my God, thank you. But, Catherine continued, her voice sharp, you are going to do something for me. Anything. The IRS is going to audit Rachel. They are going to need a witness to testify that he directed the creation of Obsidian Holdings, that he directed the transfers, and that you were acting under his instructions. Sienna wiped her eyes. She looked at the door where Rachel had just been dragged out. She remembered him screaming at her in the hallway. She remembered him saying he didn't care what happened to her. Her expression hardened. I have emails, Sienna said. He sent me instructions on my private Gmail. I have texts. I have voice memos. Catherine nodded. A faint, grim smile touched her lips. Good, Catherine said. Mr. Green will take your deposition tomorrow morning. Don't be late. Catherine turned on her heel and walked back toward the elevators. The employees parted like the Red Sea. She stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the penthouse floor, and as the doors closed, she finally allowed herself a deep breath. She had her company back. She had her dignity back. But the war wasn't quite over. Rachel was desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. Later that night, Catherine sat in the study of the Scarsdale house. The house was quiet. Leo was at a sleepover. Her phone buzzed. It was a blocked number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? You think you're smart? It was Rachel. He sounded drunk. You think you can just erase me? Go to sleep, Rachel, she said. I'm not done, he slurred. You forgot one thing, Kathy. You always forget the human element. You have the codes. You have the money. But you don't have the keys. What are you talking about? The physical backups. Rachel laughed darkly. The hard drives. The ones with the source code for the new AI. The ones that aren't on the cloud. I took them, Kathy, before the guard stopped me. They're in my bag. Catherine's heart skipped a beat. The source code. If he had all the physical master drives, he could sell them on the black market in China or Russia. He could leak them. He could destroy the value of the company overnight. Rachel, she said, keeping her voice steady. Bring them back. No, he said. I want $10 million in Bitcoin, tonight, or I throw the drives into the Hudson River. That's extortion. That's business, he shouted. Meet me at the boat basin at midnight. Come alone, or Blackwood Systems becomes vaporware. The line went dead. Catherine stared at the phone. She knew he wasn't bluffing. Rachel was a narcissist. If he couldn't have the toy, he would break it so no one else could play. She stood up. She walked to the safe in the wall behind the painting. She spun the dial and opened it. Inside wasn't money. It was a small, high-tech tracking device receiver. She picked it up. A small red dot was blinking on the screen. Catherine smiled. I didn't forget the human element, Rachel, she whispered to the empty room. I just predicted it. She picked up her other phone, the burner she used for the private investigator, Tobias Reed. Tobias, she said when he answered. He took the bait. The tracker in his laptop bag is active. He's heading to the boat basin. Call the police. Tell them there's an active extortion in progress involving stolen trade secrets. She grabbed her coat. She wasn't going to the boat basin to pay him. She was going to watch him fall. The 79th Street boat basin was a desolate place at midnight, especially in the rain. The Hudson River churned against the concrete pilings, a black, oily expanse that swallowed the city lights. Rachel Blackwood stood under the awning of the rotunda, shivering. The alcohol was wearing off, replaced by a cold, jagged adrenaline. He clutched his leather messenger bag to his chest, as if it contained his own heart. In a way, it did. Inside were 3 solid-state drives he had ripped from the server room's physical vault before the security guard had escorted him out. He checked his watch. 12:05 a.m. She's not coming, he muttered. She's calling my bluff. He walked to the railing. Below him, the dark water swirled. If he threw the drives in, Blackwood Systems would lose its edge. The new AI, the one worth billions, would be gone. He would destroy Catherine, but he would destroy himself, too. It was a suicide pact. Headlights swept across the stone arches. A black sedan pulled up to the curb. Rachel straightened. He wiped the rain from his face. Finally. The car door opened. Catherine stepped out. She held a large black umbrella. She didn't approach him immediately. She stood by the car, watching him. You came alone, Rachel shouted over the sound of the rain. I did, Catherine called back. Her voice was calm, carrying easily over the wind. Just like you asked. Do you have the money? I can transfer it, once I have the drives. Rachel laughed, a harsh, barking sound. No money first, I know you, Kathy. You'll take the drives and cancel the transfer. Bitcoin, now. Catherine began to walk toward him. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the wet pavement. She stopped 10 feet away. You look terrible, Rachel, she said. Cut the pity, he spat. I'm taking back what's mine. I built that code. I sold it. You just sat in your office and typed. I wrote the kernel, Rachel. I wrote the architecture. You don't even know what language it's written in. It doesn't matter. Rachel held the bag over the railing. 10 million, or it swims. Catherine sighed. She closed her umbrella and set it down. She looked at him with an expression that wasn't anger. It was disappointment. Go ahead, she said. Rachel froze. Throw it, she said. Throw the bag in the river. Rachel stared at her. His hand shook. You think I won't? This is the source code. This is the future of the company. No, Rachel, Catherine said softly. It's not. She took a step closer. Do you really think I would leave the master physical backups in the server room? She asked. I moved the actual drives to a safety deposit box in Zurich 3 months ago, the day I found out about Sienna. Rachel's face went slack. He looked down at the bag in his hands. Then, what is this? Those are the drives from the old legacy system, Catherine said. Windows 2008 backups, and a few bricks I put in the cases to make them feel heavy. Rachel pulled the bag back from the rail. He ripped the zipper open. He pulled out a drive. It was labeled Archive 2010. He let out a strangled cry of rage. He had risked everything, his freedom, his reputation, for junk data. You. He couldn't find the words. He dropped the bag on the wet ground. I told you, Rachel, Catherine said. I'm not the housewife. I'm the architect. Rachel fell to his knees. The fight left him. He put his head in his hands. It's over, Rachel, she said. Just go, he whispered. Leave me alone. I can't do that, Catherine said. Because you committed a felony tonight. Corporate espionage, extortion, and you did it while violating a court order. You're going to call the cops. He looked up, eyes red. I already did. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder rapidly. Blue and red lights began to flash against the stone walls of the boat basin. Rachel scrambled to his feet, looking for a way out. But there was only the river or the police. 2 NYPD cruisers screeched to a halt behind Catherine's sedan. Officers spilled out, guns drawn. Drop the bag. Hands in the air. Rachel raised his hands. He looked at Catherine one last time. Why? He asked. Why didn't you just divorce me? Why did you have to destroy me? Catherine looked at him, her face illuminated by the flashing police lights. Because you didn't just cheat on me, Rachel, she said. You tried to steal my son's future. You tried to erase me from the history of my own creation. I didn't destroy you. I just let you break yourself against the walls I built. The officers moved in. They cuffed Rachel, reading him his rights. As they shoved him into the back of the cruiser, Catherine picked up her umbrella. She opened it, shielding herself from the rain. She watched the car drive away. From the shadows of the park entrance, a figure emerged. It was Tobias Reed, the private investigator. He was holding a camera with a long telephoto lens. Did you get it? Catherine asked. Every frame, Tobias said. Attempted disposal of evidence. Extortion. Confession. It's airtight. Good, Catherine said. Send it to the district attorney. She walked back to her car. She didn't look back at the river. 6 months later. The weather in Manhattan had turned. The humid, suffocating heat of the summer trial had given way to a razor-sharp November chill. Inside the boardroom on the 45th floor of Blackwood Systems, the air was equally crisp. The long mahogany table, once a stage for Rachel's boisterous monologues and champagne toasts, was now a silent altar to efficiency. Catherine Blackwood sat at the head of the table. She didn't lean back. She didn't spin her pen. She sat with the stillness of a sphinx. To her right sat the board of directors. These were the same 12 men and women who a year ago had whispered behind their hands about Catherine's irrelevance. They were the same people who had laughed at Rachel's jokes while he funneled company assets into offshore accounts. Now they looked at Catherine with a mixture of awe and absolute terror. Let's look at the Q3 EBI-A. Catherine said, her voice low, but carrying to the far corners of the soundproofed room. She tapped the tablet in front of her, casting a projection onto the smart glass wall. Since the repatriation of the Obsidian Holdings patents and the elimination of the redundant consulting fees, our operating margin has stabilized at 22%. A throat cleared. It was William Hargrave, the board chairman. He was a man who prided himself on being a kingmaker, but he looked noticeably shrunken today. "Catherine," Hargrave started, his tone deferential. "The numbers are frankly miraculous. The street is reacting well. The stock is up 12 points since the restructuring. But we still have concerns about the brand optics." "Optics?" Catherine asked, not looking up from her screen. "The trial," Hargrave said delicately. "The sentencing hearing is today. It's all over the financial news. Rachel was the face of this company for 15 years. Seeing the founder in handcuffs, it rattles the investors." Catherine finally looked up. Her eyes were like flint. "Rachel wasn't the founder, William," she said. "He was the mascot, and when a mascot becomes a liability, you retire the costume." She stood up and walked to the window. The skyline of New York stretched out before her, a grid of power and ambition. Rachel Blackwood pled guilty this morning to 3 counts of wire fraud, 1 count of tax evasion, and 1 count of corporate extortion. Catherine stated, reciting the facts cold. "He has been sentenced to 8 years in a federal penitentiary. The company has issued a statement condemning his actions and emphasizing our cooperation with the DOJ. The optics are that we cut out the rot. Investors don't hate scandals, William. They hate uncertainty. And I have removed the uncertainty." She turned back to the table. "Now, unless there are questions regarding the new API integration, this meeting is adjourned." The board members scrambled to gather their papers like frightened school children. As they filed out, Hargrave paused at the door. "You're a harder operator than he ever was, Catherine," he said, half compliment, half accusation. "I had to be," she replied. "I was cleaning up his mess." An hour later, the executive floor was quiet. Catherine sat in her office, formerly Rachel's office. She had stripped the walls. The photos of Rachel shaking hands with celebrities were gone. In their place were framed schematics of the original code architecture she had written 15 years ago. Her assistant buzzed in. "Ms. Blackwood, she's here." "Send her in," Catherine said. The door opened, and Sienna Rain walked in. The transformation was jarring. The Sienna of the courtroom, the woman in the $5,000 cream dress with the cruel smile, was dead. The woman standing in the doorway wore jeans, a heavy sweater, and no makeup. She looked younger, tired, and stripped of her armor. She was carrying a cardboard box. "I finished clearing out my desk," Sienna said, her voice hollow. "Security said I had to bring my badge to you personally." She walked forward and placed the plastic ID card on the massive glass desk. It made a small clack sound in the silence. Catherine looked at the card, then at Sienna. "I heard about the sentencing," Sienna said, looking at the floor. 8 years. I didn't think it would be that long." "He stole $4 million and tried to blackmail a public company," Catherine said. "He's lucky he didn't get 15. Sienna shifted her weight. "I wanted to ask you something. Before I go." "Go ahead." "Why didn't you bury me?" Sienna asked, tears pricking her eyes. "I saw the legal briefs. You had enough evidence to name me as a co-conspirator. You could have sent me to prison with him. But you didn't. You gave the DA my cooperation agreement. You got me immunity." Sienna looked up, searching Catherine's face for an answer. "Why I slept with your husband. I laughed at you in court. I helped him steal from you." Catherine stood up. She walked around the desk and leaned against the front of it, crossing her arms. She looked at Sienna not with hatred, but with a strange, distant pity. "Do you know what leverage is, Sienna?" Catherine asked. Sienna blinked. "Power?" "No," Catherine said. "Leverage is understanding what someone needs more than they need their pride. Rachel needed money and adoration. You gave him both, so he used you. I needed to destroy Rachel's alibi. You were the only one who could do that." Catherine took a step closer. "If I had sent you to prison, you would have just been another victim, a martyr for him to cry about. But by turning you against him, by making you the witness that locked him away." Catherine smiled a small, wintry expression. "That hurts him more than Moho prison ever will. Every day he sits in that cell, he'll know that his loyal mistress was the one who handed the key to the warden." Sienna shuddered. She realized then that she hadn't been spared out of kindness. She had been weaponized. "You're terrifying," Sienna whispered. "I'm efficient," Catherine corrected. "You're going back to Ohio." Sienna nodded. "My sister is there. I'm done with New York." "Good," Catherine said. "Take this advice with you. Never let a man put your name on a company you don't control, and never sign a contract you haven't read." Sienna nodded, grabbed her box and turned to the door. She paused her hand on the handle. "He never really loved me, did he?" she asked softly. "He didn't even love himself, Sienna," Catherine said. "He only loved the reflection he saw in your eyes. When the money ran out, the reflection broke." Sienna left. The door clicked shut. Catherine checked her watch. 4:15 p.m. She sat back at her desk and opened her laptop. She had one final loose end to tie up. She opened her email client and composed a new message to Arthur Penhaligon. Rachel's former attorney, the butcher of Broadway. Subject: Settlement of malpractice. Claims Mr. Penhaligon. My legal team has finished reviewing the discovery documents regarding your representation of Rachel Blackwood. Your failure to disclose the conflict of interest regarding the Obsidian Holdings transfer is grounds for immediate disbarment. However, I have no desire to spend the next year in court with you. I am willing to drop the malpractice suit on one condition. You will donate the entirety of the legal fees paid to your firm by Rachel Blackwood, totaling $452,000 to the Women's Economic Defense League, a charity that helps displaced homemakers regain financial independence. I expect the receipt on my desk by Monday morning, or I call the Bar Association. Regards, Catherine Blackwood. She hit send. A deep, long sigh escaped her lips. It was the first time she had truly exhaled in 6 months. She grabbed her coat and walked out of the office. She took the private elevator down to the lobby. The new security team nodded respectfully as she passed. Outside, the air was cold and smelled of roasted chestnuts and exhaust. Her black town car was waiting. "Columbia University, please," she told the driver. As the car wound its way uptown through the snarl of traffic, Catherine watched the city pass by. She thought about the woman she had been 6 months ago, sitting in that courtroom, humiliated, dismissed, wearing a grey suit that blended into the walls. They had mistaken her silence for weakness. They had mistaken her patience for surrender. Rachel was in a cell in upstate New York. Sienna was on a bus to Ohio. Arthur was writing a check that would bankrupt his quarterly bonus. And Catherine. The car pulled up to the wrought iron gates of the university. She rolled down the window. A young man came jogging out of the engineering building. Leo. He looked so much like his father, but without the cruelty around the eyes. He had Catherine's focus. He saw the car and broke into a grin, waving a roll of blueprints in the air. Catherine watched him coming toward her. The mistress had smiled in court, because she thought she had won the lottery. Rachel had smiled because he thought he owned the game. But as Catherine opened the door to embrace her son, the only asset that actually mattered, she realized the truth. The only smile that counts is the last one. And as she hugged Leo, Catherine Blackwood finally smiled. And that is the story of how Catherine Blackwood didn't just survive a divorce, she engineered a revolution. It's a brutal lesson in the fact that the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one shouting, it's the one taking notes. Rachel and Sienna played a game of checkers, unaware that Catherine had already solved the algorithm for chess. If this story of calculated revenge and corporate justice kept you on the edge of your seat, please smash that like button. It helps the algorithm find more people who need to hear this. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a new story. I want to hear from you. Did Catherine go too far by weaponizing Sienna against Rachel? Or was it the perfect poetic justice? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.